So little chance for
Hey,
Officer McGowan to make
hi,
his mark until the
hello.
events of a humid weekend in Houston
Welcome to
take
Diana
unexpected
Emerson,
turns.
and today we are. What did I do with that? It's way over there. Okay, we're watching just my crime show.
Who are the ones that get in trouble, etc.
You're listening.
Officer McGowan pulls over a young man.
I'm really listening also because I'm crocheting, so it's not like I'm watching it.
The
It's
patrol
great
officer
to
says it's an
listen.
opportunity to get himself an informant. If Michael can tell McGowan something useful, he'll let him go. And he starts inquiring. I hear there's stolen guns going around. Michael, nervous, anxious to avoid getting in trouble with the police, offers to help the officer. Kent McGowan now has his informant. Every good officer needs an informant on the streets, even in leafy old oaks. So now you have Michael. He's just a kid, teenager, barely an adult in the laws of Texas. But what can Michael tell Officer McGowan as an informant? He feels pressured, so he turns to his friend. Hey, do you know where I can get a gun? And Jason gets him a gun. Jason Aguilar, 17, is no stranger to trouble. Jason's no angel. He's not a choir boy. McGowan arrests Jason and hears a story which then escalates what had been an arrest for a traffic misdemeanor into something completely different.
Jason Aguilar told me, he said, hey, I can buy you a fully automatic laser-sighted Uzi for $3,000. At the time, a bunch of automatic weapons were showing up in this area. You're some drive-bys and whatever. And he told me for $3,000, he could sell me a fully automatic for some guys he knows.
Officer McGowan's case is getting bigger. Jason is going to spend the night in a cell. Earlier, his mother, a lady called Susan White, had left this note. Call me if you need me. I love you. Her mother's love was about to show itself. She heads to the police station.
When she comes over there, she goes, hey, I need to talk to my son, whatever. I said, hey, he's going to jail. He's going to call you in a few hours. She was clearly intoxicated.
Officer McGowan wasn't about to negotiate. It looked to him like Jason could be part of a gun runner's ring, providing Houston's underworld with Uzis. It's an opportunity for recognition and potential promotion, and it had fallen right into Officer McGowan's lap. What better way than to stand out to your supervisors, to stand out to the sheriff or whoever are your bosses, than to be this super cop, this great cop, or even to the neighbors and the people you serve in that community, to be the one that's crushing crime that they didn't even know existed in the neighborhood.
He tells his colleagues, I've got evidence here of a gun cartel operating in this suburb. I'm going to crack it.
The day after Kent McGowan had arrested Jason, there was a further sinister development. He hears that Susan White had threatened Michael in phone calls between her and Michael's mother.
She kept saying, you know Michael Schaefer? Don't you know what happens to stitches? Don't you watch TV? In Houston, stitches get killed. Those are the exact words. She told me she's a freaking nut, is what she said. She's a nut. She's crazy. And then I said, do you think that she's capable of killing your son or having your son killed? Yes, I do. And I said, we're going to go ahead and pick her up on a retaliation warrant. She said, good, get her off the street.
He interprets a general conversation as a specific threat, and then goes from people can get killed to you can get killed. In McGowan's mind, he now felt certain he should get an arrest warrant, and fast.
My name is Jim Mount. I was formerly employed as an assistant district attorney in Harris County, Texas, and I was one of the prosecutors who was involved in getting a warrant for Deputy McGowan. I prepared an affidavit in support of an arrest warrant for Susan White's arrest on a retaliation case. So he met me about 3 o'clock in the morning at a division of the DA's office called Intake, and he and I spoke, and based on what he told me, I prepared an affidavit that he swore to was true and correct.
A traffic misdemeanor had escalated to a crime involving gun running, and even, according to McGowan, an underworld threat of retaliation.
He was absolutely certain that Susan White presented a danger, an actual danger to the informant that had been used to buy what he said was an Uzi submachine gun.
Officer McGowan had waited a long time for this moment. Taking down the head of a gun running ring which was flooding Houston with Uzi submachine guns. And who might be the leader of the gang? Someone superficially living the life of a homemaker in leafy old oaks. Susan White. The sale of one single handgun suddenly becomes a big gun running, organized crime, mafia type scenario where the don of the mafia is a middle-aged housewife. Officer Cameron was en route to the office of District Attorney Jim Mount. He wanted an arrest warrant for Susan White, who he said threatened the life of her son's friend, Michael Schaefer, a snitch who caused son Jason to be picked up by police. Informants in Houston, she told Michael's mother, can't live long. The initial district attorneys are going to say, yes, we will help you write this affidavit because this person is so dangerous. We cannot have people retaliating against our witnesses. We're not going to allow that to happen in Harris County.
He told me that Susan White was a person who was going to support her son and knew what he was doing. And so I guess in his mind, she was also part of this sale of this machine gun. He never told me in great detail about why he thought she was such a bad person. It was sort of conclusory. She's a bad person. Yeah, she's somebody that we got to get.
McGowan, a neighborhood patrol officer, wanted to be in the arrest of possible gun runner Susan White, a woman masquerading as Miss Middle America.
So I went in after midnight trying to get everything done. I went in, it was after midnight, I spoke to Jim Mount. And he said, yeah, by the time I got the paperwork and all that done, it was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
He was adamant that he wanted to arrest her himself. Again, that's not unusual. So it did, that in and of itself didn't make me think something was wrong.
Because not only now does he have Jason, the gun runner, now he's going to go after the big boss, the leader of this big gun running cartel that operates in an affluent neighborhood.
And I just told him, look, you can't get it done tonight. You can't get it done tonight. You're going to have to get it done later. And he seemed to be chafed about that. He was a little upset about that. And he said he was going to call a sergeant and then figure something out. But he was very, very clear that he was going to be the one to arrest her.
This is the arrest warrant Officer McGowan needed. He arranges for 2 deputy sheriffs to accompany him to Amber Forest Drive, Old Oaks, home of Susan White and her son Jason, who was fast asleep upstairs. It's after midnight, August 25th. On arrival, he calls her to ask Susan to surrender. She makes no reply to him. She's already on the phone. She's called 911 to complain about people outside her door.
911 County, what's your emergency?
Officer McGowan didn't know she was making the call.
And so I'm out there on the scene. We're knocking on the door for 15 minutes out there.
He, accompanied by 2 colleagues, prepares the so-called dynamic entry, breaking down the door.
I've always done dynamic entry. I want to keep this from happening. Keep somebody from flushing or drugs, grabbing a gun and hiding or whatever. I figured being this wealthy lady, I didn't know she was that nut.
At police headquarters, the 911 call continues. Susan White has been transferred. We have the transcript to clearly understand what Susan White said. Right. She sounds confused. She was in a deep sleep when she had men outside. The door gets kicked in. She's on the phone. She hangs up the phone. McGowan and two other officers rush in. McGowan later says he sees Susan White with a gun. I saw her go from right to left. So we had our weapons on our look, and she's in the corner. She's holding a gun.
And he opens the bedroom door to be confronted by this woman who's holding a gun and pointing right at him.
When I came in, she had the gun at waist level. And she never said a word. Never. She said nothing. She had the gun at waist level, and it's true, you somebody's tunnel vision. I see the gun pointing right at me.
This woman, Susan White, what he believes is the ringleader of a gun cartel, and she's pointing a gun straight at him.
She was standing like this in the corner. And the door was right here, and the door opened like this, and there was on chest doors, the TV, and a converter box, if I recall. And she was standing with a gun just like this.
He fears his life is in danger and that his death is in danger.
I'm on there 3 times, drop the gun, drop the gun.
She doesn't, she continues to point it at him.
I told her the second time, she kind of turned and pointed right at me, which proverbial Mexican standoff, and I'm about 11 feet away, I think it was. You know, I told her a third time. But she did look that, she had like this, she squared at me. And she pulled the gun like this. And then that's, and he put her finger on the trigger. That's what I told her a third time.
So he fires.
Believing his own life and that of his 2 deputies is in danger, Officer McGowan fires 3 times. First round struck her in the chest. And she started going like this. The second one was behind me, she went in the arm and stuck her in the chest. Another bullet hit her in the head. She was dead. Brian Harris has heard the recording of the incident picked up by the 911 call made by Susan White.
What you hear on the tape, you hear the entry being made.
How many is there?
He uses an old method of assessing how long it took to travel from banging down the door to the bedroom of Susan White. 6 seconds.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006. Susan is dead. She's been shot. By who? Deputy McGowan. Now, Susan had 6 seconds to live from the point that the door got kicked in to the time that Deputy McGowan sees her in her bedroom.
He's a hero. He's cracked a big case. It's been his ambition for years to do this. He's been telling people, one day I'm gonna break a really big case, and here he is. He's shot the leader of a gun cartel. She's dead.
I did what I had to do to save my life, the life of Deputy Martin Malloy at that moment. That's what I did.
As far as Kent McGowan's concerned, he's done his job. He's a hero. Case closed.
But McGowan had not told the whole truth. What was the killer's mistake, yet to be uncovered? Today, the murder rate in Houston stands at around 250 a year. In the early 90s, it was nearly double that. A North-Side, South-Side gangland feud accounted for many of that number. The death of Susan White, now a suspect in gun running who had allegedly aimed a pistol at an officer, was not immediately big news. Officer Kent McGowan had done what he had to do, no more.
Deputy McGowan, right after the shooting, is freely talking to other people about what he had to do, what he felt he had to do. He's creating this hero cop, how he saved his fellow deputies, how he saved his life, that it was this profile and courage of how he behaved, quote, under fire or potential fire.
He goes back to the police office. He's very proud of what he's done. He's boasting about it even.
Officer McGowan's conscience. Susan White had threatened to have one of his informants killed. An informant who had revealed that Susan's son Jason had sold him a gun, and according to Kent McGowan, Jason Aguilar had also revealed he could get an Uzi submachine gun for $3,000.
Yeah, that's what they were telling me. Yes, I didn't know Susan White, so I knew she was another night. I'm going by what my informant said. question him on a serious situation like that. I talked to Michael Schaefer a number of times that night, and his mother, Jeannie Jakes. They told me, yeah, that she's a nut. That kid was terrified. He was calling me 911, 911 all the time.
But reading the statements given by police, it's clear that the story does not add up, and Ken McGowan's post-shooting attitude was a concern too.
At first, his colleagues are like, yeah, you've done a good thing, but they're like, you've just killed someone and it's a woman. That's not a normal reaction to killing someone, even if they were the ringleader of a gun cartel.
That's a big red flag. As a homicide detective, and I've investigated numerous officer-involved shootings, from officers being killed to officers being involved in shootings, I have never, ever in 21 years had an officer that actually bragged about what they did. I have always seen officers that are fairly quiet. We make sure they get some counseling, some psychological counseling. It's a traumatic event. It's not natural for a human being to take another human being's life. Kent McGowan, his actions after the shooting, the things he said, huge red flag. What's wrong with this guy?
Some colleague officers have reported another troubling detail of McGowan's post-incident behaviour. He had asked for the casings of the bullets.
And then when he requests of the detectives the trophy, he actually asks for the shell casing from his shooting scene so he can use them on display. Who would do such a thing? It's twisted. It's scary to think that you have a law enforcement officer that would be out on the street that would want to, almost as if it's a World War II ace, where they put markings for every person they shot down. It's very disturbing as a fellow law enforcement officer that Kent McGowan would actually look at this as a trophy, the killing of a human being as a trophy.
Most murders involve killers who know their victims. More often than not, they're over relationship issues or money. As detectives evaluate evidence, they speak of breakthrough moments, the realization from one fact which emerges that a killer has made a mistake. From the moment that Kent McGowan began to brag about his exemplary behaviour in protecting his fellow officers from the dangerous Susan White, his version of events began to unravel. Susan White was on nobody's radar as a gun runner.
Apparently there's this big gun cartel in this affluent suburb of Houston. It's a woman. She seems like a regular mom.
Being that this neighborhood had little to no crime, most people would think is a great thing. But if you have a young officer that is trying to be this superhero, in their own mind, they can create a fantasy that's just not there. The kid at the corner street smoking a joint, that's a huge major drug trafficker attached to a cartel. Somebody is speeding, that's a possible stolen car for them. So they take what some would consider minor or non-violent offenses and they really blow it up. Now, if you take Kent McGowan's situation, you're talking about a sale of a gun, a handgun, and a sale of one single handgun suddenly becomes a big gun running, organized crime, mafia type scenario.
And then the reason McGowan had given for needing an arrest warrant began to crumble. Michael Schaefer's mother, Jeannie Jakes, 165 miles away in Austin, Texas, did confirm that the couple had spoken in general about the trouble that their sons had caused, and that Michael might be better served not becoming a police informant. But this was not a heated conversation between adversaries.
Jason's mom calls Michael's mom. No different than two kids who get in a fight in a schoolyard and parents are going to talk to each other. I take it as a conversation in generalities, not a specific threat. So you have two grown women talking to each other, and Jason's mom reaches out and says, you know what? Oh, what is Michael crazy getting mixed up with this guy? I mean, in the real world, people can get hurt. People have even died from doing stuff like that.
If Deputy McGowan had simply told me Susan White made a phone call to someone in another city and said, informants in Houston don't live long. Being sufficient for me to attract a warrant. Her judge would have signed it. No prosecutor would have accepted a charge against her.
As for the suggestion that Uzi's submachine guns were part of that night's story, it simply wasn't true. As Kent McGowan gave evidence to investigators, replaying events for them to assess what had happened, something else emerged. McGowan knew Susan White before that night's events, and she knew him well enough to be frightened that he was outside the door. A transcript was prepared of what Susan White had said, and soon it was confirmed she and McGowan had history.
Susan White says she first encountered Kent McGowan because he kept pulling her over for speeding tickets. She says what he was really doing was hitting on her.
Perhaps McGowan felt that sort of behaviour was a perk of wearing a uniform.
Kent McGowan is somebody that isn't going to sit real well with the term no. And so when he's out in that neighborhood, he's wearing that uniform. And there's a couple of things you need to remind yourself when you're a young cop. When you're really that good looking, suddenly you're wearing that uniform, and all kinds of ladies and people hitting on you. Go back in plain clothes. You're really probably not that good looking. And are you really that smart? People twice your age now are asking you advice. You haven't been on earth that long to be that wise. But that uniform brings a lot of that. But that also sometimes can give a false sense of confidence. And I believe Kent fell into that category. And he had this single, beautiful, good-looking lady. Certainly why would she spurn his advances? When she says no, that's maybe perhaps her way of flirting with him. So because Kent McGowan couldn't accept the word no, or didn't have enough common sense to see that she wasn't interested, he kept pursuing her and pursuing her.
He pursued her often enough for her to mention her concerns to one of his senior officers and to urge the operator at the end of her 911 call that night to send help.
Who's there? Okay, do you need a deputy out to your house? They are trying to break into my house, please.
And she's scared. She believes this guy's going to kill her. He has made unlawful entry into her home. All she knows in her head, Kent McGowan, and he's here to kill me.
Just days after the shooting of Susan White in an apparent justifiable act of self-defense, Kent McGowan had become a murder suspect. There were anomalies in his story. He had claimed the involvement of an Uzi submachine gun in his inquiries. Not true. To get an arrest warrant, he had claimed Susan White had suggested his informant might get killed. That claim appeared fanciful at best. And a big mistake made in his version of events. He had not told the district attorney that Susan White knew McGowan and had complained about embarrassing her. McGowan denies that he knew Susan White, though he accepts she may have known.
Well, maybe she was stalking me. I would ask that.
What was true? Was Officer Joseph Kent McGowan a hero cop or a killer in a uniform? And if so, what was the mistake that would uncover him?
Yeah.
Who was Kent McGowan? Investigators wanted to know more about their 27-year-old colleague.
Kent McGowan, I would describe as a gypsy cop, somebody who was a narcissist, somebody who truly believes that they themselves are that superhero.
McGowan kept losing his jobs. The records uncovered show a checkered career rap sheet.
He gets a job as a police officer. Things don't go well in the police force. He's accused of sexual harassment. People say he has violent tendencies. He's a shirker. He's quite lazy, actually, even though he says he wants to be a hero. He's heard making comments about women, disparaging comments about women. He loses his job as a police officer. He then volunteers to be a police officer. He loses that volunteer position. He volunteers again. He's desperate to keep on wearing that uniform and to keep having the power that uniform provides.
Kent McGowan has always refuted the claims made about him by officers who uncovered his career records. This is what he told us about the times he got fired, like when a complaint was made about him by a female officer.
See, that's not true. That's what happened. Go ahead and explain.
Or when he was let go as a police volunteer after complaints from the public.
That's not true either.
So then he went to precinct 4.
Right.
And he was fired there after 2 months.
See, that's not true either. See, that's not true either.
So you're saying the investigations against you of Houston Police Department, not true?
No, there was some minor investigation. That was it. And there was, I think, 3 of them.
As for the sexual harassment claims, it was not just Susan White who'd levelled complaints against him. It was a former colleague too. But McGowan maintains he was the victim.
There was a female officer who was stalking me back then, and she was crazy. I told her she should back off, and I talked to her after work.
There are already questions about his attitudes towards women. He's previously been accused of sexual harassment, and here he is shooting dead a woman who he has a history with.
Who detectives believe was clear. They took McGowan's plausibility and charm as a cover of the truth.
Some of the most violent killers I dealt with in 21 years of investigating homicides were charming, were so likable in that interview room. You wanted to like them, but I wasn't a fool. I knew that in a second they would kill me without even thinking twice. So Kent McGowan, he was charming, he was likable. He was obsessed with being popular. He was obsessed with being that super cop. And that's what made him so dangerous. He would do anything to portray himself as that superhero.
Character evaluations are one thing. If a jury was to convict Kent McGowan as a killer rather than believe he's a cop acting in self-defense, detectives needed more. They began to forensically analyze McGowan's portrayal of what went on during the 6 seconds from when he entered 3407 Amber Forest Drive and when he shot Susan White.
When I came in, she had the gun at waist level, and she never said a word. Never. She said nothing. She had the gun at waist level, and it's true. I was tunnel vision. I see the gun pointing right at me.
McGowan sent evidence that Susan White was standing by her bed, facing him, square on, and holding a gun in her right hand.
So I said, drop the gun, drop the gun.
She was facing you square on.
Yeah, well, at first she was. Yeah, she was like this. She had like this pointing right at me. I said, drop the gun, drop the gun. And I said the second time she comes up and she points the gun, looking for her messing the stand off, and I saw that she had the weapon in that her finger was not on the trigger. Her finger was not on the trigger at that point. And that's what I was watching. The trigger, I knew she touched the trigger. I'm going to have to shoot her. I told her the third time. I see her put her finger on the trigger, and I hollered the third time, drop the gun. I see her squeezing the trigger, and I fire 3 rounds, and she falls. Anyway, she falls face down, and then Ron went underneath me and jumped on top of her. Because we didn't know if she'd been hit or not. The room's full of smoke, the alarm's going off. I'm going to the radio call for a supervisor and ambulance. Well, first we went up to her, and she was on her left side, and the gun was still in her right hand.
The gun was still in Susan's right hand. There's a big problem for Officer McGowan at this point in his evidence.
Susan was a lefty. I venture to say that Kent McGowan didn't know that.
But Susan White was left-handed. Why would she be holding her gun in her right hand?
And if you're lefty, you're going to have, if you were to follow Deputy McGowan's story, you would have the gun in your primary hand. For the most part, you would have it in your left hand. When you look at the angle of the bullets, the wounds on her body, it doesn't match the scenario of somebody holding a gun in their right hand. So right there, when you do the physical autopsy on someone, that also is a roadmap of what happened. So an autopsy is done on Susan, and the angle of the bullet, the location of the wounds, they do not match whatsoever the scenario of Susan holding a gun in her right hand.
The angle of the bullet and the location of Susan White's injuries did not support McGowan's statements. If she was standing square onto McGowan, his shots should have entered her body in a direct, straight trajectory.
When she had the gun, when she was standing there, I said, drop the gun, drop the gun. As I told her, she goes like this, and when she pulls it up, when she does this, she got like this. She's pointing at me. And she pulls it up like this. And then that's, and you put her finger on the trigger. That's what I told her the third time.
If you listen to Deputy McGowan, they have guns pointed at each other. It's a standoff. He had to fire before she fired first. And the guns were leveled right directly at each other. However, Susan's wounds on her body, the wounds going from right to left, that's an indication she's turning. Maybe hanging up the phone, turning what? Or whatever's happening, but she's in a turning motion. And the way the angles of the wounds are, the way the angle of the bullet to her head is, that angle, that autopsy, that's a roadmap.
When they do the bullet analysis, what they find is that the bullets, there's strong evidence the bullets entered the side of her face and the side of her body. That's completely at odds with what McGowan is saying.
That is not consistent with the deputy's story that they were face to face, guns pointed directly at each other. You see, the wounds itself, that physical autopsy, totally disputes what Deputy McGowan states.
District Attorney Jim Mount was part of the system that issued the arrest warrant, so allowing McGowan the chance to shoot dead Susan White.
Now, what I believe happened is that I will.
He is now certain that he would have found a way to kill her, with or without the cover of a warrant. Nevertheless, that night would have been different if Officer McGowan had not had this crucial piece of paper.
Clearly, he wanted to be able to arrest her, to go into her house, had a legal basis to go into her house. And that's what I provided him, and what a judge provided him. That's why I say, if a guy like Kent McGowan wants to kill you, he's going to kill you. He just managed to do it under the color of law.
How many is there?
Kent McGowan was his own worst enemy. Loose lips sink ships. He wanted to be that super cop, so he brags about what he does. He perhaps fabricates in his own mind, creating this huge scenario of what took place in the shooting and the gun running, how we got this really bad person, and he's his super cop. The fact that the trophy bullets raised suspicion more than what an autopsy would do. So now you have an autopsy where the initial investigators are at the scene. They're observing his behavior. They hear about some of the comments he makes. Bells and whistles start going off. Now they look at the autopsy. They are comparing the trajectory of the bullets on Susan's body to the statement that Kent McGowan makes, which causes them to go back and look at the affidavit. Wait a minute. This affidavit says a whole bunch of stuff, and the scene is not telling us that. This is just a homeowner, perhaps with a gun in their own house, like so many other Texans or Houstonians have. This is not some major gun runner.
As a prosecutor, when you have police officers come into your office in the middle of the night and tell you, hey, I need you to write me an arrest warrant for someone, You have to believe what they tell you. You have to take it as the truth. Otherwise, the system grinds to a halt. So, not knowing Deputy McGowan, I believed that he was going to tell me the truth, and I relied on what he told me. Turns out that it wasn't.
McGowan was found guilty by a Texas jury. An appeal based on a technicality was granted, but he was found guilty again.
But, in retrospect, he got convicted twice. How can anyone think that he really is not guilty? I mean, seriously.
So what was the key turning point that led to the charges of murder levelled against Kent McGowan? What was the killer's mistake? For Brian Harris, it was not a what, but a who. Kent McGowan himself.
Kent McGowan's biggest mistake was thinking that he had the character and the ability to wear the badge on his chest. That man never should have been a law enforcement officer.
With 2020 hindsight, it's pretty clear to me that this is a guy who probably should never have been a police officer, should never have been in a position to run an arrest warrant on someone who he apparently had a personal grudge against.
When you wear that badge, you represent. That's why it's called a shield. It's a shield to protect others. It's a shield of honor. It's a shield of integrity. It's a shield of service. You take an oath to lay your life down for others, to serve other people. Kent McGowan's oath was to himself. He wore that badge to serve himself, to glorify himself. His biggest mistake was thinking he truly could be a police officer.
He was a crook with a badge, is how I look at it.
Kent McGowan was not given a mandatory life sentence. He is due for release in 2022. He still maintains his version of events that night is true.
I've got to
I know you gotta go. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I'm innocent. Donna wants the truth.
I'm not done. I'm still working.
I'm trusting you. All right. Hey, how do you get this done? The mic back here.
Willie Inman is a 21-year-old who liked to practice shooting at his Dowers Hill family ranch deep in the Arizona countryside. Recently claiming to be back from serving as a soldier in Iraq, he was on edge when police called by.
They start pounding on the door, and with me being so jumpy from the service, they're lucky I didn't come to the door with my gun. You have guns? Yes, I am. What kind do you have? I've got a Walther P22, I got an M14, I've got 3 shotguns.
Police found Ricky Flores, 16, missing from home. He'd gone AWOL before, but had promised to mend his ways.
It didn't make sense that he was gone and he wasn't coming home. So that was the first clue that something wasn't right.
A lot didn't add up for local detectives in this remote part of Apache County.
We both had the same feeling that Ricky was hurt or that he was dead.
I knew it wasn't good. He didn't hang out with the best crowd of people.
Nick Flores' brother Ricky hung out with Willie Inman, the guy with a hair trigger. One day, Inman walked into a police station and started talking. Did detectives have a killer in custody? And was he responsible for the murder of 2 other men?
I didn't suspect any foul play or anything. There was a little bit of blood that was outside of his mouth and some blood pooled up in his left ear. We know that, if you've done something bad, the worst thing in the world is for you to have to carry it the rest of your life.
The rules of engagement were in place. Cop seeking the truth. Killer, a skilled liar.
If I was to do such atrocity, I could be out there getting rid of it and you would never know.
Detectives gather evidence until a picture of a suspect emerges. Which piece of the puzzle will reveal Willie Inman as guilty of murder? What would be the killer's mistake? Wenatchee County, an area of ranches and small communities, like St. John's, population 3,200.
It's a small town. There's not a lot of people. Everybody knows everybody. It's a good place to live if you don't like a lot of company. But unfortunately, bad things happen everywhere. It just happened to be to my family here in St. John's, Arizona.
Ricky Flores, Nick's brother, was murdered.
His head was blown off with a 12-gauge shotgun.
Ricky had last been seen alive with this man, Willie Inman. He lived on a ranch just outside St. John's. Willie's girlfriend Stormy lived in Springerville, 29 miles away, different police jurisdiction. Something which would loom large in the story of William Inman. Willie walked into Springerville Station on a hot August morning just 5 weeks after his buddy Ricky was first reported missing. When he got there, he insisted on seeing the chief of police himself, Steve West.
I sat down with Mr. Inman and we started talking, just general talk.
Chief West knew nothing about the missing Ricky Flores. Why would he? Flores was a St. John's matter. This was Springerville.
Like a lot of communities, we still have crime. We just don't have as much of it. Children still walk, to the stores. They still go to the movie theater by themselves.
Chief West was as in the dark as anyone about Ricky Flores as he sat opposite Willie Inman. During a 9-hour interview session which followed, there would be many revelations. As well as a love for guns, Willie Inman shared views with Nazis. He showed his fascination by donning Nazi insignias on his baseball cap.
Wow. My grandpa was the greatest Luftwaffe pilot any pilot ever existed. Only one to receive over 1,200 kills.
Willie had a deep sense of what he believed was wrong, was right, was bad, or good, and he wanted to rid the world of what he saw as undesirables.
I try to be as law-abiding as possible.
The first time that I knew about the case was when we got a press release about the disappearance of Ricky Flores.
Karen Warnock is the local reporter who covered the story of Ricky's disappearance.
We've had other missing people in the area occasionally, and at the time it didn't really strike a chord. It was just another juvenile disappearance.
My brother went missing in August of 2009. No one really knew what was happening or what was going on. No one in my family knew.
What was confusing to the Flores family about Ricky's disappearance was that he had turned over a new leaf. He'd been something of a wild child until recently.
My brother just got out of juvenile, and instead of staying in there longer, he decided to take 1 year of probation for some minor drug charges and stuff. And he was working on himself and his life. And he was starting to realize that he couldn't just keep off. And he was really trying to work on himself. He was a good person.
St. John's detective Lucas Rodriguez knew all about Ricky and liked him, despite his adolescent ways.
Ricky Flores, good kid, a little bit rebellious. He has been in trouble. Mostly, I would say a lot of it, mostly the juvenile. Only juveniles can get in trouble with curfews, smoking, and maybe a little drinking. He has done a little bit of drugs. Lost some fighting with his mom. And by fighting, I don't mean punches. I mean verbally and not wanting to listen to mom and stuff, like wanting to be his own man and stuff like that.
And he decided that, enough was enough, and told my mom that he wanted counseling and he wanted to just do some programs to help him through it. I mean, he's a young kid. He doesn't know what's going on, and he's just trying to have fun.
How would Officer Rodriguez sum up the character of Ricky Flores around that time?
Ricky does have a good heart. He does care about his mom, does care about his brothers and family and stuff like that. He he just likes to do his own thing and doesn't want people to tell him. But he is in the process of changing his life, changing his. He just has a new kid. Now he knows he has to be responsible and change his ways. It's not just about him anymore.
What had changed Ricky for the better was fatherhood.
He wanted to do good and he wanted to take care of his newborn baby.
Ricky, Hispanic, had a white girlfriend called Jessica Johnson, now the mother of his child. They all knew Ricky was behaving himself, so why would he suddenly disappear?
I was called by dispatch and asking me to meet Mauda Flores, and she had reported him missing for, it had been a week now, and still had not heard back from anybody, and still had not heard from Ricky.
Ricky, she said, never left without his phone charger and always checked in, even on bender days when he'd get high. But not this time.
So it didn't make sense that he was gone and he wasn't coming home. So that was the first clue that something wasn't right. Well, I knew it wasn't good. He didn't hang out with the best crowd of people.
People like Willie Inman.
William Inman was just another person that hung around my house. He was friends with my brother. My mom fed him. She gave him food. She gave him clothes if he needed them.
Willie referred to Mauda as mom. So, hey, mom, I'm taking Ricky out to the ranch. We're going to shoot or something, go shooting or something like that. And Ricky said, hey, mom, I'll be back in a little while. Or Ricky and said, yeah, no problem, son. And saw them jump in the Jeep and take off.
And she waved goodbye to Ricky with Inman by his side. They went to Willie's ranch, met up with his girlfriend, Stormy Williams.
She said that was the last time she saw Ricky and heard from Ricky.
Willie Inman picked up Ricky Flores, and they were friends. And he took them out to his property out east of St. John's.
Officer Rodriguez brought Willie into St. John's police station for questioning. Where is Ricky? He asked.
Willie told me that indeed Ricky was at the ranch with him, and that they had he talked to him about drugs and to stay away from drugs and stuff like that.
It was to be a recurring theme in the interrogation of Willie Inman. He was a good guy, helping out a teenage kid with good advice during target practice. Willie had no idea where Ricky was. But detectives didn't believe him. And Ricky's brother Nick was not hopeful either.
He liked to party and he liked to get in trouble. He hung out with older people. So I figured it wasn't anything too good why he was missing.
Detectives in St. John's did not believe Willie Inman's story and suspected him in a murder of Ricky Flores. Now, could they get him to admit it?
There was an accident. Something went wrong. If it's self-defense, whatever the reason was, I'm going to give you one chance, one time, sitting there in front of the chief, to tell me why it happened.
Over the days and weeks following the disappearance of Ricky Flores, Officer Lucas Rodriguez was to meet with Willie Inman often. He'd ask the same question.
I mean, Willie, come on, tell me where Ricky is. As the interview progressed, I can see a lot of deception signs on Willie. His carotid artery, I've never seen, but his carotid artery was literally bouncing. He started sweating. He started getting hot. He didn't fidgeting. He actually took his shirt off saying it was too hot in there. I was in uniform and it was not hot. I had a vest on and I was comfortable. I just could not get him to tell me what had happened to Ricky. I asked him, I remember asking him if I was going to find Ricky alive. And Willie said he hoped so.
It was soon after one such interview that Inman left St. John's police station. He headed over to Springerville to meet up with his girlfriend, Stormy, 18 years older, with educational difficulties. Detective Rodriguez wasn't giving up easily and called on the couple there, along with a colleague, Deputy Morales. Still no answers.
We thanked Willie and Stormy for talking to us, told them we'll get back in touch with us because we were looking for Ricky. They said, yeah, no problem. Deputy Morales and I left, and on our way back into town, me and him were talking. We both had the same feeling that Ricky was hurt or that he was dead.
As for Willie, he'd grown tired of Lucas Rodriguez and the St. John's Police Department. He headed to the Chief of Police, Steve West, over at Springerville. Help me out, Chief. Get these guys off my back.
What St. John's PD is asking you is they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky.
Correct.
And what's Ricky's last name?
Florence.
Florence. Okay, so they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky Florence. They're saying what? That you were the last one to see him?
Correct. And that I know something, and they keep pressuring me like I do know something, which if I didn't, I would tell them because I want them off my back. So I'm tired of being harassed. They have no right coming to my girl's house, no right whatsoever. And last time they came here without a sheriff escort. They came in their St. John's police car out jurisdiction. And they've broken the law. They searched her next door neighbor's house, and which
this is somebody's next door.
Yeah, correct. Which they had no right being in his yard.
Willie Inman had made a big mistake. He believed one of the police forces in Apache County would not support another in a missing person inquiry, which was increasingly feeling like a murder investigation.
Normally, it's for a chief of police not to get involved in a case is kind of rare, but since he had already struck a rapport with Willie, he allowed Steve to continue talking to Willie.
Still, no one knew where Ricky Flores was. But if he had been murdered by Inman, investigators needed to find a body, establish motive and method. That last part would prove straightforward. Inman was a trained gunman whose best friends were the guns that he fired out on his ranch.
When you were in the military, were you ever dispatched overseas?
Yes, sir.
Oh, is that right? Where did you fight?
Iraq.
Oh, did you?
Yes, sir.
What was the first place you deployed?
First place was Fallujah. And then from there we moved downwards, and then it was the Sniper Alley I mainly was on, which was the 6-mile stretch between the Green Zone and Baghdad Airport.
Steve West was employing a softly approach and was getting results. Inman had almost certainly revealed how he had killed Ricky Flores, by shooting him. But if he had, what was his motive?
It was really strange because Mr. Inman, he had this affinity, number one, as far as being calm, to why he was there. He didn't seem upset about that at all. But the other thing was he had this affinity to talk about Nazism. And the way he did that is he did the Nazism, and the way it came out was on his baseball cap. He had some Nazi insignias, some little medals on there.
Inman, who cherished his German heritage, claims that his grandfather was a crack Luftwaffe pilot who fought a just war.
The final solution. And seriously, I totally understand going after the Jews for bankrupting our country and trying to steal the world and everything they do and believe in. We need our money back.
And as Chief West sweet talked Willie, Officer Rodriguez was listening to a different story. He'd asked Willie's girlfriend Stormy to call by Springerville Police Station. Her arrival was the turning point in the investigation. She'd been with Willie when he had returned to his ranch with Ricky.
It was decided to tell Stormy that Willie had confessed to the homicide. Stormy actually started talking and said yes, they had killed Ricky, and went into detail on how they had killed him and how they had taken him back to town and how they had buried him.
Until the moment that Inman entered Springerfield Station, he had revealed no mistakes in the murder of Ricky Flores. Now he was regretting ever asking Chief West for protection from those St. John's cops who'd stepped out of line. It had resulted in his girlfriend giving them both away. What had happened down on the ranch.
Just tell us what happened. That's the biggest thing.
Okay. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, stuff happens. We know that.
I'm telling you, I did not want to kill the kid. It was not murder, I can tell you that much. Okay. Oh my God, I can't believe this.
Just tell us. Well, that's okay. Yeah, just tell us the story.
Inman claimed that he and Ricky had got into an argument whilst at target practice on Inman's ranch. But Ricky fired first.
This ended up as self-defense. Something happened.
We finally got him to admit that he indeed did shoot this kid. Now, the way he said he shot him was this. He said they were both out at the site east of St. John's, and that they were out there and they were target practicing. And they started shooting cans and whatnot, and Ricky wanted to shoot the rifle, and so he let him shoot the rifle, and Mr. Inman said that he was standing by his car, and a bullet hit the window next to him. He said that he took that as an aggressive move, and he got his rifle and started firing at Ricky.
He shot at me, I shot back.
Willie did disclose that the homicide had actually occurred at his ranch. I believe he shot him in the head.
I had a single gauge shotgun, and he had my M14, and he took a shot at me, and I shot him.
As the real-life drama unfolded, it seems the case was closed.
Of course, by then he was in tears. You know, he was acting semi-remorseful. And the way that we got that interview out of him was basically saying, hey, you know, people do bad things, you know, please, you know, we know that, you know, if you've done something bad, the worst thing in the world is for you to have to carry it the rest of your life. You know, you need to come clean on that so that your conscience will be clear. And we went on and on and on, and finally that's when he admitted that.
God, I can't believe this. I'm not going to learn. It's fucking wrong.
Well, you need to settle down. We need to get all the facts so that we can determine what's happened here. Okay? We need you to stick together for us. We're not your enemies.
I need some tobacco, please.
My God, I can't believe this.
At first, Willie stuck to his self-defense story, but was he telling the truth? Was this really a case of self-defense? Ricky's girlfriend, Jessica Johnson, had a father who did not like Hispanic boys, like Ricky Flores.
I believe at one point Mr. Johnson and Melissa Johnson, the mom of Jessica Johnson, got a restraining order against Ricky and not allowed him to come around and be around Jessica. But it didn't matter because Jessica loved Ricky and she would sneak out of the house as well and go meet with him and vice versa. And Jessica had just recently given birth to a child, which belonged to Ricky.
It was even rumored that Jeff Johnson, Jessica's dad, was connected to a white supremacist group, one that Willie was all too afraid of.
Or that either way. If he goes down, there was too many out there. They are too smart. They will find me. They will kill me.
What other damaging evidence which might implicate others would emerge from the interview room? Was Willie Inman a hired gun working for a racist? Throughout Texas and Arizona, a neo-Nazi group called the Aryan Brotherhood has been carrying out drugs and gun-running crimes for decades. Exclusively white, its so-called captains exert a violent influence over its members. Fraternization with non-whites is forbidden. Detectives throughout the Apache County area suspected Jeffrey Johnson, father of Ricky Flores' girlfriend, of involvement with the Brotherhood. Police now had a theory which would blow Inman's self-defense claims out of the water.
It would not look good to Mr. Johnson that, since he's a white supremacist, that his daughter had a kid from a Hispanic kid. And did not want, he wanted Ricky gone and had offered to pay money for that.
Had Jeffrey Johnson ordered a hit on the boyfriend of his daughter? Another detective entered the room.
I understand the white supremacist swastikas and order tattoo on the guy's body. I know all about this guy right now. I've known about him for a long time. Quit taking care of him and take care of yourself. He knew you were going to murder, and he was supposed to pay you. I know that. Tell me the truth, please.
Willie was not about to give evidence against Jeff Johnson in a murder crime.
Listen, he wanted me to beat his ass, yes. He didn't want no death, no killing. And I thought about it, but it's no.
These were the facts established. After the murder of Ricky, Inman and Stormy Williams drove at speed from his ranch into St. John's and headed straight to Jeffrey Johnson's house.
He drove his body through the town of St. John's to Jeffrey Johnson's house.
The whole reason for Willie bringing the body over into town in the beginning is just, instead of just going through the back roads and going away from town, was that he came over and showed proof to Mr. Johnson that he'd actually taken care of the job and killed Ricky.
My niece was probably sitting there, just a couple months old, and, her dad's body is in the back of a Suzuki Samurai, and her biological grandfather is going out there to look at it.
Why did you take the body to Jeff's house?
Because I was scared. I wanted to know.
Tell me exactly what you told Jeff when you got to his house.
I told Jeff, dude, he's in my car. You want to come look? Dude, I need some help. What the hell am I going to do? His words were exactly, get the hell out here and I don't want to see you again. That was his words.
William said that Mr. Johnson got mad at him for bringing the body, and that got $20 from him for gas, and that was all, and he took off.
Had Jeffrey Johnson made a flippant, angry comment about wishing Ricky dead, and Willie taken it at face value? Inman left, drove up to the Elk Ranch, found a deserted spot, dug a shallow grave, and set Ricky's body alight. Storm E. Williams told detectives enough for them to find it.
Well, his body was burned so bad and his head was blown off with a 12-gauge shotgun. So there wasn't too much to be looking at. So they had to identify him by a homemade tattoo he had on his ankle. And he also broken his arm pretty severely and got some pins and plates in it. So that's how they identified his body, because there wasn't too much to say that this person was who he was.
Inman repeatedly refused to say that the murder was anything to do with Jeff Johnson.
Why are you so afraid of Jeff? What do you know about him that scares you so bad?
I know the Aryan Brotherhood. There's too many out there. He gets one message through to anybody. I will be dead. That's guaranteed. I know how they roll. He goes down, I will go down.
So you're covering, you don't have to admit to it, but you are covering his ass because you're afraid of death. Tell me that, man.
I'm afraid of death. Period.
Willie did not testify in court that he had acted on the instructions of anyone. Jeff Johnson and his wife Melissa would stand trial for hindering the prosecution in the case of the murder of Ricky Flores.
I think his charges were correct because he had knowledge and he did nothing to try to slow that down. But also, I think that by sheer virtue of it taking place, I think that was a shock to him also.
Jeff Johnson was sentenced to 7 years of imprisonment. Melissa Johnson was given probation. As for Willie's girlfriend, Storm E. Williams, she had been with Willie when he killed Ricky, had helped him move the body. But the mental well-being issues that she faced meant that she would never be charged.
Wasn't a person who could think on her own. That she would make a decision to do something, and if she felt like it, made Willie happy, or Willie wanted her to do it, she'd do it. you know, she wasn't a crazy person. She was just really gullible and would do anything to, you know, make William Inman happy.
So that appeared to be the full story of what had happened out on Inman's ranch and later in St. John's and Elk Ranch. A teenager shot, his body paraded in front of his child's grandfather before being burned and partially buried. Willie even drew for detectives where the partial burial took place, but that was far from the end of the William Inman murder story. Detectives were still unable to find the gun that he had used to kill Ricky.
He asked him about the gun, you know, what happened to it. He had indicated that he had thrown it in the sewer pond over in St. John.